My name is Jack Villiers. I'm a coach, business mentor, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Human Work. My mission is to empower people to lead authentically, heal their trauma, and step into their true potential in the world. Over the last 5 years, I've mainly worked with men, focused on guiding them to reclaim and connect with their masculinity. In this video, I'm going to share about how to lead authentically as a man in today's world. And the phrase being authentic is used a lot nowadays. So I really want to break down what that means and the journey that I've been on it and give you some tips on how you can step into leading authentically. So the first thing to share is a little bit about my story. When I was growing up, all the male role models and leaders that I saw around me led in a particular way that became quite familiar. And this was to be really focused on results, to be quite aggressive, to be quite dominating. And that was all the role models I had around me when I was growing up. And then as a teenager, and then when I went into my career and started working in the city, the first job that I landed was a really fast-paced, pressured, stressful job. And again, the men who were leaders in this business, and it was mostly men, again presented those same qualities. So from my childhood through to working in my early career, I always had the same idea of what being a man in leadership was. And it was to dominate, it was to win at all costs, and it was really to not show empathy and kindness for others. The interesting thing is, in that environment, I found material success from leading in that way. But in terms of how I felt inside, over time, more and more time that passed, I didn't start to feel good in leadership. And I did that for a number of years. And the journey that I went on, as I got better results from working in this way, even though I was progressing, I started to feel devoid of emotion. And really, I just completely shut off. So if something was really difficult, I'd act like everything was fine. I wouldn't be vulnerable with anyone. I would just act like, everything was fine. I don't care. I've got it all worked out. And that was me essentially pretending that that was the case when really everything wasn't fine, and the part of me that was the true part of me, where my values were and all of these things that I'd been completely ignoring, started to get louder and louder, that I needed to tend to them. And after a number of years of leading in this way, where it led me to after doing all of this stuff was really just basically having a breakdown, because I was living completely out of alignment with who I was. So after getting to this point of breakdown, I realized something needed to change. And the first step of that was really just starting to introspect and understand, why was it that when I was leading in this way, when I wasn't being vulnerable, when I was suppressing my emotions, why was it that I started to really struggle and feel like I couldn't cope with things? And what I started to realize is that there had to be another way. There had to be a way of leading that actually allowed me to feel in alignment and in fulfillment while also getting the results. And so for me, when I think about authentic leadership, there's 3 key pillars. The first one is values. So firstly, do you even know what your values are? Because the reality is, we all have values. Whether we define them or not, organically, through the decisions we make, the experiences we have, we are living by a set of values. So pillar 1 is really about understanding what your values are, and do the actions that you take in your day-to-day life in terms of how you lead in your relationships, in your work. Does that align with the values that you have? Pillar 2 is your leadership style. So every single person is unique. We all have different life experiences, different personalities, different preferences. And I believe that everyone can have their own unique leadership style. And again, similar with the values, if we don't take the time to really feel into and reflect on what that leadership style should be, then it's just happening and we're not having any intention behind it. So pillar 2 is really about defining what your leadership style is and having something that you can actually aim to focus on and to embody. Pillar 3 is really your connection with yourself. How well do I understand all of this? The thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, all the things that are happening. And to really be in a place of authenticity, I need to have that connection. And for me, the big gateway of that connection is my self-awareness. And that could be my internal self-awareness, so understanding how I perceive myself, and my external self-awareness, which is understanding how well do I understand how others perceive me. Because then when I have that connection with myself, when I have that self-awareness, I can actually understand what's going on. Like, am I in alignment? Okay, well, I felt I was being really authentic and in alignment in that situation, but actually my partner or my friend is having a real different experience. So through that self-awareness, and that connection with self, we actually get data back on ourselves and from others that allow us to know, are we actually operating from a place of authentic leadership? To go a little bit deeper into each pillar, so for me with the values, a really good way of doing this is to think about a time in your life when maybe things were really good and everything felt really in alignment, and ask yourself, what values were you living at that time? So when I think about my own, and I think about great times in my life, well, there was a lot of balance, maybe in my work and my family and my relationships, and everything felt balanced. And also there was a lot of connection. So for me, I know that balance and connection are two of the most important values for me. And at the same time, another way that you can work with your values to start with is think about a time in your life when something didn't feel right, when it felt really challenging, maybe it felt like something bad was happening, and what values were happening at that time, and what was the opposite of those. So for example, if you felt you were being dictated to, well, maybe the opposite of that would be freedom, and that's one of the values that you have. So there's loads of opportunities for you. There's loads of different ways that you can do it, but to really start to introspect about what are those values for you. And you may have some values that are values you're living today, and it's like, oh yeah, I really live that value. And then you may have some other values that are ones you want to cultivate, right? So for me, if I look at about 3 or 4 years ago, I really wanted more community. That was a value for me, but I didn't have it in my life. And so through that value of community, I've oriented my life towards living in community, in connection with others, spending more time with other people and putting myself in those experiences. So we can have values that we're living today and values that we're trying to cultivate. And I think the important thing here to share about values is that they evolve over time. So the values that you may have now, they're not static. They may change as you grow. Maybe you become a father for the first time, and that's an evolution of what your values are. For leadership style, I think it's really important, if we want to step into authentic leadership, to have something to aim for. So again, similar with your values, my invitation for you would be to take the time to write down, what do you think your unique leadership style is? What is the qualities that you bring in particular? So I speak for myself. One that I know I have is really focusing on enabling people. So delegating, enabling, giving people opportunities to learn. So whenever I'm leading and I show up, I know that that's the style that I'm working with. And also to bring joy to the work that we're doing, because I believe that work should also involve joy. So when it comes to your leadership style, similar with the values, take some time to introspect, think about when you felt most in alignment when you're leading, and take a moment to draft, what is the leadership style that I want to claim, that I want to step into? And then you can start to measure yourself as you step into that. The final one for connection with self, there's so many different ways that you can do this, and it looks different for everyone. It could be meditation, it could be working with your breath, it could be nature, it could be exercise, it could be, time on your own. There's so many different ways to do it. But for me, it's really important, as much as we understand what's going on in our mind, we need to have a connection with our body, because I know that when I'm in a state of authentic leadership and I'm leading in a good way, my body feels good and I can tell what's going on. Whereas if I'm like, oh, actually, that didn't really feel in alignment to how I want to lead or how I want to approach this situation, and having that connection with my body and with what's going on allows my intuition to actually tell me that. So this is a way of just, exploring and finding what is it that allows you to feel connected with yourself. One of the things I feel that's really important to say about this journey, stepping into your own authentic leadership, is to be patient with yourself. This isn't necessarily like a binary place or a particular destination that you just get to one day and you're there. It's a constant evolution of feeling and knowing and being aware of when you're in alignment and when you're not in alignment. So what I really want to say here is like, be compassionate with yourself. You know, don't judge yourself too harshly. We're all going to make mistakes. I know that when I'm leading, sometimes I'll show up and I'm like firing on all cylinders and I'm like really embodied and I'm living my values. And sometimes I have a really shit day or something goes wrong or I'm struggling with something in my life and I may not get it right. But can I take ownership of that, give myself the reflections? Because I really believe that that is the most authentic thing that you can do. And one step further on that is really, as you go on that journey, can you be vulnerable about when you don't get it right? Because that for me is a real sign of authenticity. So the way that I like to measure my progress on if I am leading authentically really comes back to one of those key pillars, which is my self-awareness. And it's really, how do I feel? Do I feel in alignment? Is the way things are happening, is the way, that I'm feeling about my relationships, the work I'm doing, the things that I'm putting attention to in my life, do I really feel in alignment with how I'm approaching all of that? And then the other biggest one is to really look to those people around you who you trust and you know will give you like an honest reflection, and ask them specific questions like, how do you feel I'm showing up? So to my partner, I may ask, how do you feel I'm showing up as a father right now? Because I feel like I've been really busy recently and I've been distracted with some things. Do you feel like I'm being present at home? And then I can get a reflection that's maybe like, oh, actually, you have been really busy recently. I know you really want to prioritize us. And then that gives me the invitation to continue to step deeper into that authentic leadership at home. So for me, it's really key that there's an introspection and a reflection within yourself that you're continuously doing. And you're also actively seeking the views of others who you trust, who you know are going to be honest with you to say, does it feel like I'm in alignment? And one of the best measures that I found is when what I'm feeling about myself and how I'm leading is the same as what other people are telling me, then I know that there's alignment, because what I'm feeling is what others are experiencing. So that for me is really where self-awareness and your connection with one of yourself is the best way of knowing where you're at on that journey. I believe that right now masculinity is going through a massive shift across the world. And as I shared earlier in my story, these old stereotypes and ways of leading that men have been synonymous with, which in my opinion is dominating, win at all costs, less empathy, keep growing. It's all about getting more rather than necessarily nurturing and making things sustainable. I feel that there's a massive shift happening right now. And I feel that more men are starting to lead from their heart rather than from their head. And I think this is, when we look at everything that's been going on in the world and we look at like politics and capitalism and business and all of these things, we can see it everywhere. And there's a lot of men, particularly in leadership. So I really feel that this new paradigm of masculine leadership, authentic masculine leadership, what it's calling forward for is for men to lead from their hearts, men to be connected to their emotions. Because I know that when I show up as a leader and I am available to share my emotions with others and what I'm feeling, I get way more out of the experience of collaborating with them, of being in relationship with them. I believe that this new paradigm, we're already starting to see it. We're starting to see shifts, and my invitation for men is really one of the best things that you can actually do is start by just talking to another man. What does authentic leadership mean to him?